Well, it is time now for today's France 24 debate, and it's been the source of high drama, confusion, some choice insults, and much public mirth. The apparent chaos at the White House now bringing about the firing of its latest official mouthpiece, Anthony Scaramucci, after just 10 days in the job. Well, it's even got the Hollywood actress Kate Hudson comparing the situation to one of her most famous movies. This is her much shared new version of the poster for How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Just one of the many responses coming out on social media in the last 24 hours or so. We're asking, how much damage has all this done to the White House, though? And is the situation about to change soon? Also, what other business is going unnoticed in the meantime? Let's bring in our guests from Fort Lauderdale in Florida. We're joined by Republican strategist Ed Pozzuoli. Hello to you. And from Washington, D.C., we can speak to...
Hello to you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. We can speak to Molly Ball, who is a politics writer for The Atlantic. Thank you very much, Molly, for joining us on the France 24 debate.
Happy to be here.
Now, Ed Pozzuoli, let's perhaps come to you first. As a Republican strategist, what kind of strategy are we looking at from the White House from here on in? A reset? Now there's a new chief of staff, presumably very soon a new communications chief.
Well, I mean, look, General Kelly has been installed now as chief of staff, and I think that that's a good thing. He brings a lifetime of discipline, a lifetime of doing things through a process, and I think this White House sorely needed some discipline and process around its decision-making and who actually spoke for the president and the administration. I think this is all a very good thing for purposes of organizing what is a rapid-fire, issue-oriented White House.
Now, there has certainly been a lot going on there, a lot of change. It wasn't just Anthony Scaramucci who's left. As you said, there's a new chief of staff as well. Molly Ball, I know that you've interviewed Reince Priebus, who was fired just a couple of days ago as chief of staff. It seems he's insisting all is well, but this is a major humiliation for him, and surely by inference, the Republican Party establishment too.
It does seem that way, and Priebus, by the way, contends that he resigned. He was not fired, but he was let go in any case in a very humiliating way. The world found out about it with the president tweeting that Priebus had been replaced quite unceremoniously. However, when I spoke to Reince, who I've known and have covered for quite a long time, he was still very much in the camp that the White House is doing great things, that the president is on track to do great things, that this was merely a new direction in order to allow them to be even more effective. The fact that he's not burning any bridges on his way out has created some speculation that perhaps he is still seeking some other kind of role inside or outside the White House.
Ed Pozzuoli, would you see that as possible for Reince Priebus after this scorching humiliation for him?
Well, I don't think it was humiliating to him. I think Reince Priebus is a fine man, has proven his mettle over time on behalf of the RNC and President Trump, for that matter. I think he's a real valuable asset, and the Trump administration should see how he's best used. But to Reince's point on this is that President Trump, on issues, on substantive matters that the American people really are interested in. This palace intrigue aside, it's nice for a debate, but the bottom line is that the American economy grew over 2.6% last quarter. I think that's the first time that we've broken through the 2.5% per quarter in some 8 years. I think that's really good news. Some of the policies that the Trump administration had put in place are working. The deregulation of certain industries and pulling back on the federal government overreach on certain businesses is actually causing both economic activity and job growth to occur in the United States, and that's where most Americans, that's what matters most to Americans.
All right, Ed Pozzuoli, we are having a couple of technical issues on your line to you there in Fort Lauderdale, so I'll come back to Molly Ball for sure for the next question. I wanted to ask, with Reince Priebus now gone from the White House, the only traditional GOPer left there would seem to be the vice president. To what extent can we really still talk about this being a traditional Republican Party presidency, with there being so few traditional party members, sort of establishment members, in the Trump team?
Well, Donald Trump has never been a traditional Republican. I think he would be the first to admit that. And that was part of his appeal as a candidate, both in the primary and the general election, was that he was cut from a different cloth. However, he was surrounded by different factions, people who had different worldviews and different ideologies. And I think, you know, to Steve's point, the palace intrigue doesn't matter as a sort of a soap opera, but it does matter as a sort of symbolic struggle for the soul of this administration and for the direction it pursues on policy. Reince Priebus was a voice for the Republican establishment. He was also a crucial link for the Trump administration to the congressional leadership, and particularly to the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, who was from the same state, Wisconsin, as Reince Priebus was. And so the vice president also is very much a traditional Republican, but you also have voices in the White House like a Steve Bannon, who's much more of a populist, like a Gary Cohn, who's actually a Democrat. Jared and Ivanka are also thought to be more on the moderate to liberal end of the spectrum. And so what a lot of lawmakers, particularly the Republicans who control Capitol Hill, are wondering is whether this administration is now going to chart a different course on policy, one that is perhaps even antagonistic to the priorities of conservatives.
Indeed, and if I can just stay with you, Molly Ball, while the ongoing action at the White House distracts from the Republican Party's priorities, we are also seeing some commentators saying that it's distracting the public's attention away from other important events that are coming out. We've seen, for example, today, this claim that Donald Trump actually dictated himself a statement for his son in response to these allegations about collusion with a Russian lawyer. There's also been Bill Browder's testimony to a Senate committee about Russian operatives in the United States. All of this really flying under the radar, though, while we're watching the Anthony Scaramucci show.
Well, I wouldn't say it's flying under the radar. I mean, it's certainly been big news. But I think the larger point is, you know, I'm not a legal expert and I don't have access to whatever's going on inside the special counsel's investigation. But this investigation is going on whether it's on the front page or not. And eventually it's going to bear fruit. Either the special counsel and the Senate committees are going to find something there or they're not. So I would say it doesn't really matter whether the public is paying attention to these things or not. It doesn't diminish their importance because these investigations are continuing despite Donald Trump raging against them and despite his attempts in some cases to undermine them.
Ed Pozzuoli, if I can come to you on the same point, that claim from some commentators that there's some sort of intentional distraction techniques coming from the White House to distract attention away from other affairs going on.
Well, I think that's nonsense. But what I would say is that we've had investigation after investigation around this Russia issue. And the Russians, for all intents and purposes, all they want is chaos in the American political system. And frankly, the continued discussion, investigations, and Democrats railing about it every day, all they do is play in the hands of the Russians. And so what I would say to you that the average American wants is they want a strong economy that allows for them to get greater and greater economic and job opportunity. One, two, is they want to be safe. And so some of the things that Donald Trump is doing, the focus on M13, the gang that is now infiltrated some 30,000 members across the United States, I think some of those kinds of issues are actually more important and impact Americans day to day. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's more important. And the focus on this is that the investigation, the independent counsel will go about his investigation and let him go about about it and see what happens. But so far, we haven't seen anything material around it with all of that investigation. So let's stay focused on what's important. You have issues like North Korea, you have issues going on in Europe, you have general terrorism, and you have the economy in the United States, and those things count more. And I'll share with you, from a conservative perspective, the policy plot of this administration has been very conservative, and it will continue to be. I don't see a change in the future on that, regardless of who the chief of staff is.
All right, no change in the future. Thanks very much for giving us your thoughts. Ed Pozzuoli, Republican strategist, joining us there from Florida, and also Molly Ball in Washington, D.C., politics writer for The Atlantic. Thank you both very much for your time. That does draw this edition of the France 24 debate to a conclusion. Thanks for being with us here on France 24, and stay tuned.